So many young people are at the pool these days. It's noisy with them all loafing around making me look so old. So rude. Doesn't anyone work here anymore?
Ada. Kids these days, right? Adachi, isn't it? I've seen you around here before. Let's sit down where these weaklings won't stand a chance.
Sure. That is better. Do you have any kids, Miss?
Shimamura, I have two daughters. Although my husband would say with me around, it's more like free. One's in middle school and the other's in high school. You?
Just one. Oh, but one is enough. A daughter. She's also in high school and just so moody.
Teenagers? I've never seen a lazier creature. I'm planning to trick my eldest into getting some exercise by inviting her to this gym. She wouldn't last a minute in the sauna.
Now, you never know. Kids can surprise you. My daughter was always been standoffish, but these days she comes home late and spends hours on her phone. She has no friends and definitely zero interest in boys. I'm beginning to suspect that there's a girl she likes.
Oh, how mysterious! I should introduce her to my eldest. You have to see the way she was looking at this cute waitress at the last time we went out for the Chinese food. She was totally oblivious, but I'll be shocked if she doesn't come up by the end of high school.
Let's not be hasty. You know how it is with teens. The moment their parents get involved, they lose interest. Besides, should we really be encouraging a high school romance? Let's just say that we should just watch and see how it plays out in this episode. Okay, I'm going back to the pool. I have a feeling I'll be back in here before long. See you around, Shimamura.
Definitely. But think about it. If they got together, we can all have dinner in the future.
Can you do a sit-up?
I'll message that to Adachi just as I'd been about to leave the house. And approximately 2 minutes later, she'd call me. I took my phone out of my sports bag and after placing the bag back on my shoulder, I answered. I peeked at the corridor through my door and saw Mom still loitering about. Yeah, it seemed that we weren't tight on time. Just then, I heard Adachi's voice.
What was that message you sent me?
Huh? It's exactly what it says. I was just wondering if you can do a sit-up.
I lean against the wall by the door as I talk. It wasn't really the sort of question that I thought required a call, and as such, I found myself a little flustered. You see, whenever I talk with someone on the phone, I like to prepare the conversation beforehand. This time, I hadn't been able to. Although, thinking about it, people definitely told me that it wasn't a normal thing to do. To be so self-conscious about such a thing. I wonder.
A sit-up?
Adachi's voice grew distant. Then, after a few moments, it returned.
Yep, I could.
She reported. Apparently, she had actually tried it out. How conscientious. Diligent, even.
So what about it?
Well, that's pretty impressive.
I clapped my hands, still holding the phone. In my heart, however, I felt a little disappointed. For a second, I thought that I might have found someone who shared my pain.
To tell you the truth, I can do it unless someone pushes my feet down for me.
Really?
Yep.
I patted my abdomen through my clothes. I didn't have any extra weight down there, but that also came at the cost of not having any muscles. Each night, I laid down on my futon worrying about how I was going to get up in the morning. In case you're curious, my sister could do it. She really could. Well, at least I had breasts.
I see. Was that all? So,
Yep, that's all. See ya.
wait!
I quickly said as I cut the call. I was kinda astonished. What the heck kind of conversation had that been? Maybe it would have been better to talk for a little while longer. Well, not that I had anything to talk about. Adachi wasn't the talkative type either. And I got the feeling that we would both have just ended up staying silent. On top of that, I really couldn't talk to her for one more second. Oh, there we go, making excuses again. I felt guilty, though I wasn't able to pinpoint why. Or maybe not. The conversation had felt like trying to grip a cloud with your bare hands, for sure. But just as it had started getting on my nerves, Mom had called me and told me to hurry. Right. I forgot to mention, I was going to the gym with Mom this afternoon. Yeah, that's what I meant. I couldn't talk to her because I had to leave. Language can be weird like that sometimes. While you had to be over 18 years old to join the gym, it seemed that a ticket was enough for a single day trial. Also, as Mom was a member, I heard that she was able to purchase trial tickets at discounted price. She'd given me one of those tickets for some reason, and I decided to go with her to see what it was like. What was my reason to try it? Don't know. If I had to say, probably boredom. Sure, it wasn't the most exciting thing in the world, but neither was staying home and either playing with my sister or studying. Might as well move my body a little, I thought. Not that a single day's worth of exercise was going to make a difference, of course. Our family owned a single bicycle. It could easily have supported 2 people, but as Mom was absolute against riding it like that, she ended up making Dad drive us there instead. We crossed the large bridge at the shopping district, and right past the city's sports grounds, I caught a glimpse of a blue-white billboard. The color combination was oddly reminiscent of Pocari Sweat, the drink. Well, anyway, the name of the gym was written on sign in English. I looked to my left, to the opposite side of the gym, and saw a parking lot there. There was a parking lot next to the building as well, but that one was already full. That wasn't to say the other one wasn't quite packed too, because it certainly was. Seemed the gym was quite popular. Or perhaps there was just a lot of people with too much time on their hands. The car stopped in front of the building. I got out, followed by Mom from the passenger seat. Dad then drove away. Mom hadn't asked him to come along, but even if she had, it didn't appear that he had any intention of ever training his body.
Always pass the physical examinations at work without any trouble, so why should I?
I remember him saying, was that really the main issue?
Hey, come along!
Mom called to me while rolling her right shoulder.
Yeah.
I replied as I followed after her. The sports bag I was using, a hand-me-down from Mom, was horribly dirty and damaged all over. Both of its ends had worn out and now resembled stretched-out elastic bands. Holding up those ends, I walked in. There was a reception desk right through the automatic door. 2 female employees sat behind it, both wearing white jackets. Mom gave one of them her membership card, and I did the same with my ticket. In return, the woman gave us a pair of blue wristbands with a key attached on each one. Keys to a locker, most likely. They were numbered as well, and mine was number 83. 83? Huh. I thought about it for a while, trying to come up with something that I could remember it by. But nothing came to mind. I didn't have any of those fated numbers, or whatever they were called.
Shall I explain the building's layout to you?
The clerk asked me.
No? Thank you.
I declined politely. Having to stand around and talk to someone seemed like a huge pain in the butt. I circled around the left side of reception desk and came across a glass door with tennis court on the other side of it. A middle-aged lady stood there, hitting yellow balls with her racket over and over again, presumably practicing. A group of people that appeared to be her friends watched her do so. There were old ladies too. Incidentally, so were the people sitting on the red sofas arranged in a circle immediately before me. It was then that I realized it. Whenever I looked, all I could see were middle-aged and elderly people. Sure, I suppose it made sense for there to not be any teenagers here, but the fact that I couldn't see anyone who looked like they were in their 20s or even 30s was a little surprising, to say the least. It was just like Mom had said. I wondered how old the average member was. Passing through a sales area where they sold swimsuits and tennis equipment, I reached a shoe rack and took my shoes off. Mom had already gone up ahead. That's just the kind of person she was, always standing far in the distance, beckoning others. I opened locker number 83 to my left and put my shoes in. I then climbed up the stairs and entered the second floor, where my attention was instantly caught by various types of devices there. The place was filled to the brim with black exercise equipment. Indeed, this really was a gem. There was a line of 10 or so treadmills along the wall, all of which were currently occupied by sweaty middle-aged people running at their respective phase and angle. Each treadmill also had television installed in front of it, all playing the same time drama. Deeper in, there was a group of old ladies doing aerobics in a separate room. Giving them a sidelong glance, I headed towards the locker room. As I did, I could feel the eyes of a bunch of old men nearby focusing on me. What the heck are you staring at? I wanted to ask them. I stuffed my sports bag in the locker, changing into exercise clothes I bought with me, and tied my hair back. There was a scale on the floor that I passed twice. Once on my way in and a second time on my way out. But I purposely ignored it both times. Mom was still changing her clothes, which was a little weird considering that she'd come here first. After letting her know that I was going ahead, I exited the room. I returned to the second floor where all the equipment was. I looked to my right and saw a bunch of mats spread on the floor deeper in. Next to them were large, colorful balls. There was a person there, pinching one of those aforementioned balls between their extended legs and shaking it left and right. Ugh, just looking at it made my sides hurt. For some reason, I got the feeling that Hino would be good at that. There was a sales area on the second floor too. This one selling shirts as well as mats, trying to sell you something at every opportunity. Huh? Personally, I'd never been this persistent about anything in my life. Had I? No, don't think so. Now then, what to do? I stood in place and looked around, trying to find an answer to that question. Just then, a person stepped off on one of the treadmills. Perfect timing. You never know unless you try, I thought as I stepped onto it. Putting the settings on whatever, I began running. It didn't take long before I had to tone them down, however, and after just 5 minutes, I had to completely stop. Oh, my sides hurt like crazy. Regardless, I decided to pretend like it was nothing.
Done. That was probably good for now.
Idiot.
Mom said as she smacked me on the head, having appeared at some point. Don't know if it was due to her being all trained up or whatever, but she put some serious snap into it. And it hurt quite a bit.
No wonder you get bad grades in school.
She pretended to cry, going as far as to act like she was gripping her tears. She was wiping her tears with her sleeves, which was a little weird considering that the sports shirt she was wearing was short-sleeved. How exactly were my school performance and lack of physical strength related? Was it because they were both matters of perseverance?
Young people are a rare sight around here. I'd like it if you at least presented yourself in a bit more of an impressive light.
I'm not sure if a person's age is really the deciding factor there.
I look around and saw a man old enough that it would definitely have been safe to call him a grandpa, lifting some pretty serious weights.
You've been lazy ever since you were little, haven't you? Yeah, I think that's how it was.
What sort of a mother fumbles while reminiscing about her daughter's past? Well, not that even I could have explained to you what I was back then. I remembered a few random fragments, but most of the details had already left my mind. I hadn't been the kind of child that got anything that stood out written on their report card. That's for sure. I remember there having been a section in graduation essay where the teacher wrote a short comment about each individual student, and I bet she'd had a hard time coming up with anything to write when my name came up. Of course, I couldn't recall what she had ended up writing.
Now, this is how you do this.
Mom said, having gotten on the treadmill in my place. She was running super fast, and uphill at that. How many minutes could she keep this full speed sprint along? I was pretty interested to find out, and so I decided to stay and watch.
By the way, you're going to school every day, right?
She asked me as she ran. While at it, she also pushed the buttons of the TV screen in front of her. Always had to be doing something, huh? Pulling that all aside, she could have brought up more annoying topic.
Well, you see me leaving every morning wearing my uniform, don't you?
That doesn't necessarily mean that school is where you're going to.
Her eyes grew narrow, and I could sense a tiny bit of hostility in them. The way she stared at me was intense, and almost made me confess that it was all my fault. And I wasn't even lying. I really did go to school every day. That was the truth. Was this what they called motherly pressure?
Well, I am going, I swear.
Leaning against the handle of the treadmill, I turned my eyes towards the TV screen, pretending to watch it so that I wouldn't have to look at her. I didn't often get a chance to talk alone with Mom. Not that I really wanted to. No, I hated it so much that if I had known about this beforehand, I wouldn't have come at all. That's what my parents were like to me. Mom was still running. It was a powerful run, yet she was still going steady. She hadn't lifted her chin, and her swinging arms hadn't slowed down at all. Whereas I'd gotten exhausted and shriveled up almost immediately, she felt so fresh and lively.
Listen, if you don't go, it's just gonna get you in trouble later on. The people around you too.
She didn't appear to be buying my explanation. Was that also a parent thing, being able to see through their children's words?
Ever since you were little, I've always taught you not to be a burden to other people, haven't I?
She continued.
Yes, I know.
Were we about to start having a lecture? Was that the reason she had asked me to come with her? I was reminded of how she often jokingly told my sister not to grow up like your big sister, and it made me laugh. It might have been a cliche thing to say, but I did understand that she was ultimately just worried about me. Still, being in puberty, I wasn't going to accept that she was right, even if deep down I knew that she probably was. I bonked my head lightly against the treadmill and let the recoil carry me away.
Where are you going?
To the pool. I think I've had enough exercise for one day.
Weakling!
I waved at Mom, still running, and walked away. I'd heard beforehand that this gym had a pool, and it was pretty much the reason why I had come here, to just float in the water, idling away. Being done with exercising as I'd proclaimed earlier, I headed back towards the locker room. Though I'd by no means been doing it seriously, my forehead and back had still gotten sweaty at some point, and I now felt a pain in my biceps. I'd also done some exercises aimed at my stomach region to help with the sit-ups, holding a ball between my legs and shaking it from side to side, and as a result, my sides were hurting as well. Maybe I had overdone it. The lack of any sort of stretching before I began could also have been why. My muscles were gonna hurt tomorrow, weren't they? No, probably not. I was too young for that sort of stuff. Deciding to think optimistically for once, I returned to the locker room. I pulled out my sports bag from the locker and changed into my swimsuit. It wasn't any special swimsuit, just one I'd bought for school. Being a high schooler meant not having opportunities to visit the ocean with my family or anything like that, and as a result, this was all I had. I put on a swimming cap as well. It was pretty difficult to get my hair inside, giving me a sense of just how much longer it had grown since first semester. Passing a group of old ladies that had finished doing aerobics, I headed towards the pool through a different exit. I'd barely taken a step outside when the dense smell of chlorine hit my nose. The disinfectants used here were far stronger than that at our school's pool. I was reminded of summer, even if it was already close to being winter. Gagging slightly, I climbed down the stairs. Deeper and deeper into the darkness I went. Then, at last, I could see light on the other side of a door. As I slid the door open and stepped inside, my attention was instantly drawn to the disinfected fluid covering my feet, going up to my ankles. It felt lukewarm. The one I was used to in school was cold, which is why it being warm took me aback slightly. After a quick shower, I headed towards the pool itself.
Yeah, I really am glad that I joined. Sometime even I have good ideas.
I was startled by the sudden voice. I looked up at what resembled a block wall and saw a young, blonde man with freckles on his nose, sitting there, laughing to himself. What was he looking at? A group of little girls undergoing a swimming lesson in the rightmost lane? Whoa. He might not have looked bad on the outside, but the way he stared at the girls made me a little uncomfortable, to say the least. His eyes were narrowed as if he were looking at something bright, and his face was twisted into a smile. Definitely weird. Having perhaps noticed that I was staring at him, the man turned toward me. Whoa! When he'd been looking at the kids, his eyes had sparkled as if he were watching over a treasure or something, but as he faced me, no emotion could be felt in them. It was like he was looking through a window at scenery he was tired of seeing. Pretty, but not interested. The only explanation I could think of for this obvious difference in reaction was that the man was either extremely fond of kids or just a straight-up pervert.
Oops.
As if not wanting to miss a second, the man turned back towards the girls. I had to say, I was leaning pretty heavily on pervert. Probably for the best to keep my distance. Getting away from him as fast as I could, I entered the pool. There were stairs and a handrail installed by the left edge, and I used those to climb into the water. A group of elderly women walked about in the leftmost lane, meant for water walking. It almost looked like they were performing a ritual of some kind. I slipped in. As you might have expected of a heating swimming pool, the water was quite hot. Honestly, as my skin was still burning from the exercise I'd done, I kind of wished it had been colder. I did a quick splash, sinking underwater down to my chin. As I did, the water with the smell of chlorine that I still hadn't gotten used to reached just below my nose. It wasn't just my imagination. Even here, people were staring at me. Was it because I was wearing a school swimsuit? Or perhaps because of my age? There were likely people who enjoyed such a thing, but I certainly wasn't one of them. No, it only made me feel uncomfortable. I also felt like I had been slightly careless. I was the center of attention, which was to say, out of place. This just wasn't somewhere I was meant to be. Half standing with most of my body underwater, I took some steps forward. An old man swimming on the neighboring lane passed me, and the resulting wave caused water to enter my nose and mouth. Wiping my face, I extended my knees. As it turned out, hiding underwater wasn't an option either. I really wished I had asked Adachi or someone to come with me. Although, I did wonder if she would have. I couldn't really imagine Adachi looking too happy somewhere with this many people staring at her. From what I'd heard, she'd never been to the school pool either. As I continued walking, almost like being pulled along by the stream of old people, I caught a glimpse of the pervert from earlier jumping into the pool. The way he secured the lane right next to the one where the swimming lesson was happening made me feel that he was quite used to doing this sort of stuff. A professional, you could even say. Ugh. Having put on the goggles from his forehead, he began swimming. Whoa, that's one fast pervert. Even though all the other swimmers around him were middle-aged or elderly people, you could still tell that that man was going quite fast. In basically no time at all, his front crawl sent him to the opposite side of the pool. Not wasting a second, he kicked the wall and turned, maintaining his speed with fast pulls. It seemed kind of fun, honestly. Although, as I looked at it closer, I noticed that there was something strange about the way he swam. Mainly, the angle of his neck. I put on my goggles too, and dove underwater. Observing the pervert from down there, I quickly realized what was wrong. His head wasn't rotating at all. I see. Even while swimming, his eyes appeared to be locked on the girls. A real hardcore pervert. I was a little worried that he might strain his neck, but perhaps that would have been a good thing as far as the world was concerned. Still, while I might have been shocked and a little taken aback by the man, he also made me open my eyes and think. The world really was a vast place, filled with all sorts of people. For someone who is looking at the world from a slightly different point of view than mine, it would have been wholly possible to see us as a gathering of heretics. The only thing that set us apart, me and that person, was that I was incapable of perceiving the hearsay. That was to say, these sorts of people were easy for anyone to recognize. Better to keep my distance. As I was walking, one of the 6 lanes became empty. I decided to make my escape there. Unlike the walking lane I had been in, this one was meant for swimming, and had a sign written on it saying that it was reserved for sprints. I chose to ignore it completely, however, and simply floated on the water's surface. I wasn't at all in the mood for swimming. Instead, I took off my goggles before spreading my arms and legs apart. The stares of the people around me stopped mattering the moment I turned my eyes towards the ceiling. The lights there were quite intense, forcing me to close my eyes to avoid getting dazzled. As I did, a sensation of my body being shaken from side to side pushed to the front. It felt more like I was being rocked by darkness than water. Among the sound of splashing water, I could hear Mom's voice. If there was one lesson she'd hammered into my skull while I'd been growing up, it was to avoid being a nuisance to other people. For people who did act that way, their behavior could first and foremost be traced back to their family situation. She always said that. Still, I had to ask, who exactly was suffering due to me floating here? I was just having some fun away from the grips of gravity. Nothing more serious than that. It was the same when I was skipping class. I merely wanted to get away from a place that made me feel like I was going to suffocate, like the bottom of a well, or in this case, the classroom. Whether or not I was present didn't matter. The class was going to proceed smoothly either way, so what was the problem? Well, to be fair, that probably wasn't what Mom meant. No, she was likely worried about me growing up to be a worthless loser who didn't contribute to anything and caused people trouble the way that a person who lived with their parents till late adulthood would. Something like that. I kind of wanted to tell her that it was my life and that she should just leave me alone, but then again, my current situation didn't exactly give me the privilege to do so. I might have begun thinking of myself as a full-fledged member of society as I entered high school, but in the end, I was nothing but a child who lacked the ability to take responsibility for her own actions. That's what I must have looked like from the point of view of an adult, at least. Having opened my eyes, I put the goggles back on. After that, I relaxed my body ever further. I pushed away the air from my lungs as I sank, as if throwing away my body's lifebuoy. I grew heavier, but at the same time felt liberated. Staring at the bubbles that floated up from my mouth, my back thudded against the bottom of the pool. The surface of the water above me was blue, almost as if it had been dyed by the floor below me. I was reminded of the brand of mineral water Adachi drank, aqua blue. There was something outstanding about that level of color and reflection. The sound of flowing water hit my ears too, matching the visuals. I felt so incredibly comfortable. No water had entered my goggles, yet my eyes felt moist. I found myself in a bit of a dilemma. On one hand, the only way to reach the peaceful pool bottom was to empty my lungs. But on the other hand, doing so meant that I couldn't stay for very long. Though I didn't want to leave, the lack of air forced me to the surface. Once there, I gasped for air, refilling my lungs when, all of a sudden, I felt a pushing sensation near my abdominal region. The air I just sucked in was pushed out, and once again I sank beneath the surface. Having recovered, I quickly kicked the bottom of the pool to push myself back up, only to catch the culprit running from the scene of her crime. It had been Mom who pinched my side.
The way she ran, laughing and pushing water aside, reminded me of a kappa. Well, not that I'd ever seen a kappa, but that's how I imagined them to be. That, or a stereotypical fleeing soldier from a gag manga.
Your age!
That was the only thing I yelled after her. I watched as she got up from the pool, and following her, I did the same. What now? Having taken off my swimming cap, I headed towards the opposite side of the pool. That's where the showers and the indoor whirlpool baths were, and as a result, steam filled the air, making me feel like I enter a hot spring. There was also a door there, leading to an outside area of more whirlpool baths. I peered in and saw Mom in one of them. I decided not to go there. Right next to the door that led outside were two saunas of different types, a mist sauna and a steam sauna. I could sense an appropriate amount of heat coming from either one. I decided that I might as well try entering one now that I was here, though that led me into another dilemma. Which one? For a while back, I stood there, comparing the two. It was a pretty tough thing to decide, considering that I'd never been in a sauna before. I was still standing there with a blue plate you were meant to sit on my hands, when a person, a middle-aged lady, appeared. She passed me, clearly intending to enter a sauna, and as she did, I happened to take a look at her face. A strong sense I had seen her before filled me, almost like deja vu, and I found myself staring at her. The woman quickly noticed this, however, and I and turned to face me. However, she stopped in place. Had having our eyes meet really been that big of a deal for her? The woman wasn't wearing a swimming cap, giving me an indication that she was only here for the sauna. Her hair was black, and judging by her appearance, she seemed to be around the same age as Mom. Who was it that she reminded me of? While I was thinking about that, the woman opened her mouth.
I don't like you.
Though the content of her statement was incredibly harsh, the way she said it made it sound like she was joking. Definitely didn't know anyone I'd associate with that tone of voice.
As this place is filled with nothing but grannies and grandpas, it lets me feel superior for being the youngest one, even at my age. Ignoring the grade school kids who come here for swimming or tennis lessons, of course. Anyway, that's where you came in. Get what I'm saying?
The woman just kept talking and talking. To sum up her long rambling, she appeared to dislike anyone younger than herself. Never before had I had something like that said to my face.
Just kidding. But really though, it's quite rare to see young kids here.
Oh, really?
I came close to gasping out loud while replying. Staring at the side of a middle-aged face, I could feel the mist of deja vu clearing. My suspicions were confirmed beyond a shadow of doubt as an old woman walked out of the sauna and dressed her.
Oh, you came too, Mrs. Adachi. How come you're always in the sauna but never seem to lose any weight?
That's none of your business.
She replied jokingly to her gym buddy. That surname caught my attention. It was one I was more familiar with. This all had happened immediately after I'd realized who the woman reminded me of. Adachi. As Yashiro would say, must be destiny. Japan sure was a small place. What were the chances of running across Adachi's mother in a place like this? Was this what they called fate? I was already bad at dealing with my own mom, and now I'd met Adachi's. It was a difficult situation to say the least. Trying to make myself small, I stared at her inside the steam sauna. Adachi hated talking about her parents. She really ever did. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing weird about someone my age not wanting to talk about their parents. No. I just felt like the opposition towards them was different in nature compared to the type that was characteristic by adults. For example, I still had a bit of warmth left from mine, but Adachi, ice cold, dry like sand. Moreover, it was easy to imagine her not knowing that expression or emotions caused her that sand to solidify.
So, that coach, pretty bad at teaching, huh?
Definitely. That other one is much better. Nicer voice too.
Adachi's voice was now getting sweaty in a sauna with a different old lady. Tennis appeared to be the topic of their discussion, something about a male staff member being bad at his job. Honestly, it didn't sound all that different to when girls in school talked about the good and bad qualities of boys from their class. Decently, bad-mouthing your own gender was also made for a good conversation. Unlike her daughter, Adachi's mom was quite sociable and seemed to enjoy talking to people. She definitely looked older than her, but other than that, the resemblance was stunning. Their jaws especially. They were the exact same, the colors of their hair matched too. And if I had glanced at her quickly, I might have actually mistaken her for Adachi with a different hairstyle. This gym was quite a long distance away from where Adachi lived, so then what kept her mom coming here? Wondering that, I continued observing her. Still not sure whether or not I disliked how brimming with motivation she appeared to be. It's so hot in here. It felt as hot as if it was the middle of summer, and soon enough, I started feeling dizzy. I'd always hated these sorts of levels of heat. Why had I entered the sauna then, you might ask? Well, Adachi's mom had, and I felt inclined to follow her.
Good grief. By the way, how old is your child now?
15. First year in high school.
Adachi's mom replied. Oh, Adachi's birthday hasn't passed yet.
Oh, that's nice. Must be relaxing now that the entrance exams are behind you.
I suppose.
Mike's taking university exam this year, and
I wonder, had my mom been talking about that stuff like that to other people last year too?
You say relaxing, but honestly, it's anything but. I have quite a difficult child, you see.
She said while smiling. My eyes automatically turned towards her. That expression, difficult child, had caught my attention.
What goes on in that head of that kid? I have no idea. Always so gloomy and afraid of strangers.
Based on those few times Adachi had talked about her mother, this wasn't at all how I imagined her to be. Still, it did more or less match the way that mothers were in my head. Incapable of understanding their children. Adults were quick to forget what they'd once been. As such,
Excuse me.
there are times where you had to speak out, even if you didn't particularly want to.
Though I might not know your child well or at all, I don't think the way you speak about them is good.
That was a lie. Well, maybe I don't know if I say that I knew her well. My heart was racing. To put it simply, I was extremely nervous. Still, I couldn't blame myself too much. It was still a level of courage to talk to an adult. Courage I very much lacked. Honestly, it felt like I might pass out at any moment. And it definitely wasn't the heat of the sauna that was doing that. Adachi's mom stared at me suspiciously. She probably hadn't been expecting me to join the conversation.
Are you certain that the reason you don't understand your child is because they're difficult and not because you don't interact with them?
Her eyes opened wide at my statement. Did this mean I'd been wrong? Medley mothers like mine definitely understood their daughters, at least to a certain extent, that was to say. They're involved with their children. This is why their snide remarks were so accurate, and why their children detested them so much. Now, compared to that to Adachi, could you really say that I didn't have a point?
Oh, I don't want to start an argument or anything.
I quickly added before I got yelled at. I definitely didn't think I could win an argument against a middle-aged person. It just seemed like a complete waste of time to me. Now, whether she listened to my advice or not, that was a whole other matter.
You came here with a parent?
Adachi's mom asked me. The tone of her voice was way more relaxed than I anticipated.
I did.
What's your name? Who are you?
I don't think that's relevant here.
I was saying something that was all my personal opinion. Something my parents had nothing to do with. Adachi's mom looked like she wanted to say something, but before she could, I opened my mouth instead.
Like I said, I'm not going to discuss this with you.
I once more emphasized my lack of desire to keep going. I simply wasn't interested in meddling in the lives of others. Neither did I want someone to meddle in mine. What I'd done, blurting out something that I needed to get off my chest and then promptly fleeing, really characterized the young people of this generation. I had really hoped that she would just ignore my irresponsible remark. Yet, Adachi's mom remained motionless, almost as if there's something on her mind. She stared at me, her eyes looking like they were filled with curiosity rather than anything negative. I knew for certain that I hadn't given her my name, and as such, it seemed likely that she didn't know who I was. No, her interest in my response probably came from being the same age as her daughter. The old lady who she had come to the sauna with stared at us from behind, utterly baffled as to what was happening. Adachi's mom didn't attempt to say anything else. No questions either. She simply continued staring at me. When things became silent, I found myself having to move. That was the one thing her daughter and I shared.
Oh, this. I don't know which one of us is correct. So why don't we have a contest to determine that?
A contest?
I was being quite pushy, even if I do say so myself. Regardless, doing it this way would undoubtedly be faster than attempting to resolve anything by talking. I'd be happy if I never had to meet her again. As such, I decide we settle the matter right now.
Yep. The one who can remain in the sauna longest wins. If I win, then that means that I'm correct. What I ask of you is to act like a good mother for your child for just a single day.
What did I mean by that? What did it actually mean to act like a mother? The answer was the answer lay beyond my grasp. Regardless, if I were to succeed, it'd be that much more fun when I see Adachi tomorrow. That alone was my motive.
Is this what they mean when they talk about kids being rebellious?
Indeed.
I wasn't doing this because I was Adachi's friend. No, not at all. I placed my elbows on my knees and slouched forward. Was the liquid that was dripping down from my hair pool water or sweat? I couldn't tell. I might have been a little reckless to challenge her into this. I'd been just about to throw in the towel when Adachi's mom slouched forward herself, assuming a position quite similar to mine. I felt like a battle had already begun. In other words, it was too late to back away now. How stupid was it to fall for provocation of someone you just met and barely spoken to? I was reminded of that time Adachi had to challenge Yashiro to a bowling match. Perhaps her whole family was like that, obsessed with competition.
You people are weird, said the only lady who had come with Adachi's mom. After tilting her head, I couldn't exactly deny her assessment. No matter how you thought about it, this has been one weird course of events. Had I said something that would require Adachi's mom to apologize and repent? Not to my knowledge. I merely jumped in to correct the statement. So then, why it led to this? Anyhow, the endurance contest had begun. A pretty straightforward one, no special rules or anything. The hot steam would hit your back, making it feel like you were evaporating down to your soul, and you'd have to fight back against that feeling. As cool as that might have sounded at first, that was pretty much all there was to it. Maybe it would have been more exciting to have a swimming contest instead. Of course, my chance of winning would have been much worse there, which is why I purposefully avoided suggesting it. The old lady was the first one to leave. She warned us about overdoing it or something. Though, as the ringing in my ear had ground kinda loud at that point, it was a little difficult to make out exactly what she was saying. Adachi, who I dare say was sitting at home, probably couldn't have imagined in a million years that this was what her mom was doing. having a childish dispute with her classmate in a sauna.
What exactly do you mean by good mother?
Adachi's mom asked me in the middle of it. Her voice carried quite a bit of humidity. As my mind had grown quite hazy, I found answering her question even more bothersome than normal.
Well, I don't have children. How should I know?
Okay, your ideal mother then.
Huh? My ideal mother? Was that really something you could ask another person?
Well, normal, I guess.
What makes normal parent?
Like being with their kids, eating with them, I guess. I don't really know.
The thing with relationships was that once you attempted to define them, they became even more impossible to grasp. That's how I viewed all human relationships, as shapeless, formless concepts that floated the ether and could only exist that way. Friends, family, all the same. Any attempt to flesh them out more than necessary only caused them to grow hollow inside, which is why I didn't bother trying to make something that couldn't be seen, visible, caused it to lose its invisible value and turn into something else entirely. The thing that was now visible wouldn't be what you originally wanted to see, and you'd find yourself massively disappointed after falsely assuming it to be your relationship's true nature. Believing that there was no bad side to your friend might have been wrong, but at the same time, focusing solely on picking out their bad parts and convincing yourself that that was who they really were was quite strange as well. That was to say, a lasting friendship required a certain level of ambiguity regarding both sides, both good and bad. I'd been certain that my explanation wouldn't be enough for her, yet Adachi's mom fell silent again. A frown formed on her face each time a drop of sweat dripped down on her eyelid. She'd also begun tapping her foot against the floor quite hard. Much like her, I too leaned forward, assuming a pose that would let me endure the heat the longest. 10 or so minutes had passed. In total, it had now been 20 minutes since we'd entered the sauna.
The other day, there was an old man who stayed too long in a sauna, fell over, and started bleeding.
Adachi's mom was trying to unsettle me. There was something adult-like in that, using those sorts of underhanded tactics.
Want me to let you in?
Her bright red face twisted into an awkward smile as she offered to surrender.
I don't need you to let me win.
Okay, let me win then.
No, I won't.
What sort of a conversation was this? The heat had gotten to us, causing random words to come out of our mouths.
I'll let you win.
Please don't.
In the same way, it also became increasingly difficult to grasp what we were actually talking about.
If you're having fun, I'd like you to say so.
Suddenly, Adachi's mom lifted her face and changed the topic. There was a strange expression on her face, as if she was pushing out her lower lip.
No matter where I take you, you always act reserved. I have no idea if you're having fun or not.
Is this something you said to your daughter?
Yep,
How old was she?
5, I think. Or maybe 4.
She counted with her fingers. Adachi must have been so much smaller back then. Wait, did saying anything that implied that I still saw her as being small?
That's quite the old story. Could you think of anything more recent?
If a parent talks to their child about every little thing, they only find it annoying, right? Well, that's pretty much how it has been for me.
I suppose I know what you mean.
I definitely didn't like excessive meddling. Neither did I like complete negligence, though. Parents were pretty much the only people out there accepting of such selfishness. As such, I wish that they would have noticed it. Noticed that their children held this contradiction. And yet, since they did, it was the parents' duty to teach them how to deal with it. That's how I thought it should have been, at least.
All right. I think it's about time I let you in.
I told you, you don't need to.
Adachi's mom stood before staggering toward the entrance. Oh, running away? It seemed that she'd hit her limit. She pushed the door open, but stopped for a second in the doorway before turning her head in a sluggish motion to look at me over her shoulder.
Wait. Daughter? No. Never mind.
Adachi's mom shook her head as if she'd been about to say something. Regardless, she left without another word, leaving me to wonder that something had been. Even now that the competition was over, I remained in the sauna. I was thinking back to our conversation, wondering if I'd said something I shouldn't have. It made my chest hurt. I eventually tottered my way out, and as I slumped down on the white chair set up outside the sauna, I finally realized it. We hadn't decided what would happen if I were to lose before starting the competition. It was difficult to imagine that Adachi's mom hadn't noticed this. So then, why had she remained silent? I immediately began searching for an explanation. The only one I could come up with was that that the heat had gotten to her and made it hard for her to think straight, though. Perhaps it had been her pride as an adult? Yeah, that made more sense. I didn't doubt for a second that she had a certain level of arrogance to her, and it was that arrogance that caused her to act that way. Something like that. Being a child, I couldn't fully understand it, only pretend like I did. You really worked hard yesterday, so just take it easy today and rest. That's what my body was telling me. Using my muscle pain as a convenient excuse, I'd headed to the second floor of the gym instead of class on Monday morning. Adachi had been there as well. Perfect, I thought. I could really use her legs. Indeed, I was currently lying down on the floor with Adachi's extended thigh as a pillow. Though her skin had been cold at first, it was now quite warm and soft.
Is it just me, or have we done something like this before?
We have. Although, I was the one resting on your lap back then.
Oh, right. I remember now.
I rolled over. Adachi's head was lifted up, and her eyes were pointed toward the ceiling instead of me. While there were some part of her that supported the theory that she was simply spacing out, her half-open mouth, for example, her cheeks certainly didn't. Nope, they were bright red. Something slightly strange was going on with her leg as well.
Hey, are you okay? Your legs are shaking.
Huh? Yeah, it's nothing serious.
She replied, basically telling me to ignore it. Really? This is nothing? To test my theory, I squeezed the part that was twitching with my finger. As I did, her entire leg jumped into the air and stayed there. My head slid down the slope as it formed, rolling all the way down to where her skirt was. A few seconds later, her leg returned to its original position. I didn't, however. That would have taken too much effort. I simply remained there, where I was, rolling over so that I was facing Adachi. I was reminded of an earlier back and forth we'd had. Oh, right, I shouldn't try smelling her. All the while Adachi continued to stare at the ceiling. Her head might have been in the clouds, but her body was still reacting, something like that. There was definitely something strange about the way she was acting. Right, I met her mom yesterday. I couldn't rule out the possibility that our meeting was somehow connected to Adachi's behavior. It might have been the reason she'd come here. If so, it would have been my fault. Adachi has been quiet for a while, but all of a sudden, her mouth opened.
What did you do yesterday, Shimamura?
What did I do? Let's see. Just some stuff. This and that. This, that.
This and that?
She tilted her head, looking confused. I wasn't really sure why, but I had been decided to keep the fact that I'd gone to the gym hidden. There was a chance that she didn't know that her mother went there, although thinking about it, that wasn't really a good excuse. I could always choose not to bring up that fact. Anyway, I turned my gaze upward, causing Adachi to instantly wander to the side, as if dodging it.
So, like yesterday,
Yeah?
my mom was, like, acting all weird.
She muttered. So many likes. Adachi really was starting to act like a delinquent. She even spoke like one.
Weird in what way?
I could easily guess what she was about to say next, but decided to ask anyway. Her fingers moved through her hair like a comb before she opened her mouth.
She ate dinner with me.
And that's weird?
This was a given in my family. We always ate together. Dad and my sister included. We'd done so since I was in grade school, and it was one of the reasons why I had such a hard time to grasp Adachi's feeling.
Definitely. It was so nostalgic, I guess you could say. Also a bit oppressive.
Adachi had clearly having trouble finding the right words to shape our emotion. While the end result was a bit unclear, what I could tell was that she hadn't enjoyed it. Rather, it seemed she'd felt uncomfortable, out of place.
She always makes food for me, but never eats with me. Probably because she's so rarely home.
It looked like Adachi's mom had kept her promise. What a surprisingly conscientious person, I thought. That same sincerity could also be felt in her daughter. The two really did resemble each other in more ways than just appearance.
Did you like that she did?
Hardly. She didn't talk about anything. Just sat there silently. I can't even remember what the food tasted like. That's how uncomfortable it was.
I see.
Anyway, I ate breakfast by myself like I always do. Really, what was up with that evening?
Difficult to say. Of course, that was a complete lie. I knew exactly why she had done it. I rolled my body into a ball, almost like I was hugging my knees. Most likely, Adachi's mom had felt just as uncomfortable as her. A common relationship, I suppose. I didn't really feel sympathy for either one. What I did feel was regret. Regret for sticking my nose where it didn't belong. Nothing had changed with Adachi. Still, she had managed to speak to me, or rather, to another person. about something a little strange. As far as she was concerned, that was probably more important. Strange, considering our family environments, it felt like they were the wrong way around. The way we dealt with people, she and I. One wanting to keep the distance, one wanting to close it. No, it might have been the right way after all. The more you had, the more apathetic you became. The reverse was also true. Was that it? Then again, not even I wish to live completely alone. That will just be impossible. I don't remember who said it, but I'd once heard that those who live completely by themselves could no longer be categorized as people. The balance that made them human beings had crumbled, and they should be viewed as a whole different species entirely. Something that I could definitely see the point there. Now that I mattered, I wasn't planning on doing something that outrageous. There were worthwhile things you could get from other people, no doubt about that, like using their lap as pillow, for example. A short gasp left Adachi's mouth. Simultaneously, her eyes turned down towards me. The topic was settled, and it seemed that she had only just now reacted to my head being right next to her stomach. Her body grew visibly stiff. I tried lifting my head slightly, only for it to be instantly pushed down. Why exactly had she done that? Whatever the reason was, I couldn't be bothered to fight back and simply rest my head upon her legs and skirt. My nose rubbed against the fabric, and it kinda hurt. This will surely result in my nails being crushed, and it hadn't even been that pointy to begin with. Well, so be it. I decided to bury my face into Adachi's thighs for now. Wait, no. Putting it that way kinda made me sound like a pervert. I quickly began thinking of a more suitable expression. The lack of oxygen made using my brain difficult, however, and I was forced to accept my fate as a pervert. I quickly rolled over as the hand pushing my head down was lifted. It took me a second to catch my breath, almost as if I had just come to the surface from underwater. The air entering my mouth tasted slightly different. It made me giggle a little.
I did it.
Huh?
I smelled you.
I told her the truth, just like she had done back then. The second those words left my mouth, Adachi's entire face went bright red. It felt like some switch in the back of her head had been flipped on. I should mention, the tone of red on her face was different from that of her mother's back at the sauna. Hers had been bright red, whereas Adachi's was peach. Peach was definitely the more charming of the two. Things about that disparity, I thought this would be a good moment to make a request.
Hey, Adachi, do a sit up for me.
Why? What's up with you and sit-ups lately?
No reason. I just want to see you do it.
I left my body ambiguous. Adachi paused for a moment, but after that, began to move. There was a good chance that she was doing it to hide the fact that she was blushing. A little late for that. Adachi crawled across the floor to an open spot where she then lay on her back. With her feet turned towards me, she did a quick sit-up, and then another one, and another one. The way she lifted her body was sluggish for sure, yet she still did it, showing no signs of getting tired. After the fifth one, she stopped and lay back down on the floor. It felt like I'd just been shown the gap between us as truant students.
Humph.
I leered at her, and if having noticed my stare, Adachi lifted her head.
What?
Her reaction and expression were completely innocent. Looking at them, I found myself wanting to tease her a little.
Careful now. I can see inside your skirt.
It was just a joke. I wasn't actually picking under her skirt or anything. Regardless, Adachi instantly sprang up. What a reaction to a mere joke. I was reminded of how quick my little sister was to get on her feet when a cockroach or a centipede crawled into our room. Anyway, Adachi got up, sat straight, and pushed down her skirt. Then she glared at me. Her face was bright red, showing just how badly she'd reacted to my joke. It almost made it seem like I was a bully who'd made her angry.
Did I do something wrong? I thought I was being nice by telling you straight.
That's sexual harassment.
It was the first time in my life something like that had been said to me. How strange. It really wasn't something someone of my gender was expected to hear. Huh? Sexual harassment? Come on, it's not like anyone else was looking. That wasn't to say that I hadn't been looking either, because I hadn't been. Honestly. Anyway, my excuse didn't seem to be enough to satisfy Adachi. I wonder what would. Scratching her flushed cheek, she muttered back an objection.
Having you look is kinda, you know.
You know what?
She wouldn't answer, but she really remained a mystery to me. I waited for this storm of a conversation to be over before returning to the original topic and congratulating Adachi.
Still, it's pretty incredible how you're able to do a sit-up just like that. Must be because you're always biking such long distances.
You can't, Shimamura?
I could already hear my muscles squeaking as I moved my body and lay face up. The floor smelled of dust and varnish. While it definitely didn't feel good having my back against, staring at the ceiling made me feel like my conscience was being up there, and quickly forgot about the floor. I put my hands behind my head, I then bent my knees and took a deep breath. Breathing out that air, I began. My neck rose, so did my shoulders, no less than my neck. My back was off the floor as well, just a little bit. My neck hurt, it was cramping and hard. My powerful stomach was left to bear an impossible burden. I couldn't breathe. I gave up.
Was that a sit-up?
Adachi asked.
Looked to me like you just moved your neck.
That last part was implied from her expression. She hadn't actually said it out loud. You didn't use your stomach. She probably also wanted to add. Damn, Adachi, stop being so correct. Not that I'm complaining to my imaginary version of her was going to do anything. I pushed myself off the floor and grinned with embarrassment. Unfortunately, as my cheeks were far too stiff for grinning, I ended up coming out pretty horribly. The pain I felt in my joints had been the cause. I tried so hard, but to no avail.
In the end, nothing changes in a single day.
Adachi tilted her head, looking puzzled. It seemed that she hadn't quite understood what my remark was about. Good. It will only lead to a more complicated conversation if she knew how I met her mother. A conversation there was no need for.
Shimamura? What do you mean?
Just some stuff.
I pushed myself onto my feet, and after brushing the dust off, put my back on my butt, began walking towards the stairs. It was just about time for the lunch break. We'd been resting the whole day, but I still felt like I needed some more rest. As such, I decided to go by lunch. While I was there, I'd put some for Adachi as well. Like always, I was trying to avoid changing so fast that the change became visible.
Bonus chapter. Yashiro, the visitor. I moved to my right. Swish. She also moved. I fled to my left. Swoosh. She stood in the way. I braced myself and broke into a run. Yeah! I could hear her chasing after me. Step, step, step. Why was this happening? My home was nearby, so I ran there. I flew through a corridor, stopping only quickly to check that sister's shoes were in the entrance.
Sis!
I screamed as I burst into the room. She was there, watching TV while leaning against a chair she had dragged out. She turned to look at me, though only her neck rotated. The rest of her body stayed where it was. This caused her hair to flow down, and it kinda made her look like a character from a horror movie. Her lips moved lazily.
Welcome back.
There's a weirdo!
I yelled, letting sis know that this was no time for idle greetings.
Huh. A weirdo.
Sis was quite the weirdo herself, but that wasn't the point here.
A weirdo chased me! Her hair was all like... Huzzah!
I explained through gestures. As I did, sis got off the chair and stood up.
A pervert? Are you okay? Did she do something to you?
She asked, crouching before me. She looked dead serious, which was pretty rare for her. All adult-like. I was kind of shocked.
She stood at me and blocked me.
And? Did she touch you anywhere or try to take you with her?
No, nothing like that.
Well, that's good.
She sighed in relief. Her stiffened shoulders relaxed, and she stood back up. She then left the room, likely headed out to check the weirdo herself. I thought about following her for a second, but I had a feeling she'd tell me to stay if I did. Still, I had to be there to identify the weirdo for her, and so I ended up going regardless.
I knew it, sis! You're a bad girl!
I said as I caught her stepping into the entrance barefoot.
Be quiet.
Half standing, she opened the letterbox and picked through. A few seconds later, I could hear a massive sigh leaving her mouth.
I see. Yep, she sure is a weirdo.
She muttered before straightening her knees and opening the door. Huh? She's gonna open it?
Hey, you, mysterious shorty. Try not to move all suspiciously in front of other people's homes.
She called out to the weirdo who had been walking about in front of our house. As she did, the weirdo waved back at her. The girl was about my size and wore fluffy clothes as well as a hat, the latter of which looked quite heavy. Now, what was weird about her, you ask? Her blue hair. It was tied in a bow behind her head, like the wings of a butterfly, and was surrounded by grains of light floating in the air around it. She was also carrying a container full of croquettes with her.
Oh, Destiny!
Huh? This girl was friends with sis? In any case, she ran up to me, looking extremely happy. Her footsteps made a particular sound, As for what that was, well, she was wearing beach sandals. Were her feet the only part of her body that weren't cold, perhaps? Anyway, she ran up to Sis. The grains surrounding her hair flew all over. Some even reached me. So pretty.
Ho ho! So this is where you live, Shimamura.
Damn, you really do look like a weirdo, you know that?
Sis grabbed the weirdo's cheeks and pulled them. They were quite stretchy from the looks of it.
Were you the one chasing my little sister around?
As she said this, Sis pushed back and forced me to step forward. The weirdo replied, staring at me. She shook her head lightly as Sis let go of her cheeks, after which she nodded. Uh-huh.
This weirdo is Yashiro. She might be weird, but she's harmless. Probably. We are friends? No, how shall I put it?
We're bound by destiny!
I didn't get it at all. Regardless, it seemed that her name was Yashiro. That's really hard to say. Let's just go with Yachi for short. Oh, that's it? Her hair was dyed, just like Sis's. That meant they were fellow delinquents.
So, you want something?
Well, I do want to eat these croquettes, but I don't need your help for that.
Chuckling to herself, Yachi held up a container of croquettes she was carrying with her. People often started making weird friends once they entered high school, and it seemed that Sis was no exception to that. I was kind of worried about her future. Had that black-haired girl who'd come to our house the other day been a delinquent too? I slipped behind Sis to hide. As I did, Yachi instantly circled around her to peer at me. I ran away. Swish! She chased after me. Swoosh! Why was Yachi chasing me in the first place? I have no idea. She was like a playful puppy chasing after a child who hated dogs. I ran circles around Sis, and she ran behind me. Her neck turning around and around, Sis followed us with her eyes. She eventually seemed to get bored of it, though, and grabbed us by our heads. Then, after we were stopped in place, she slipped away from between us and began making her way back inside.
Hey, you t-shirt to play by yourself. I need to study.
Don't leave me alone! I screamed in my mind as I clung to her.
Hey, don't grab my skirt.
She said before placing her hand on my forehead and pushing me away. I could see Yachi standing there, her hands placed on her hips, looking extremely proud of herself for some reason.
It's rude to call someone a shorty, Shimamura.
Her hands still on my forehead, Sis turns toward Yachi.
Wait, how old are you even?
Let's see.
Yachi began counting with her fingers. She folded them all, then extended them all, then folded them again and extended them again. There was no end to it. At first, Sis stared at her silently, but as she just kept going and going, she eventually began hurrying her along. Yachi was well into hundreds when she at last spoke.
170 years. Plus or minus a few.
Oh, so you've been alive since the Muromachi period? Period of the Northern and Southern dynasties? One of those two.
This clearly wasn't taking her seriously. Her eyes grew narrow, and her shoulders shook as laughing to herself.
Yes, I know it must be shocking to an Earthling. Also, just so that you know, my brethren were all over 800 years old.
As for Yachi, She couldn't have been more serious. Sis didn't say anything back and simply scratched her brow, almost as if she's been astonished beyond words. Earthling? Though nothing Yachi said made any sense to me, that was one part that particularly stuck out. I decided to try and ask her about it. As I did, Yachi approached me. Before I could run away, she brought her face right next to my ear. Whisper, whisper.
I'm actually an alien.
Oh?
Don't believe her.
Sis warned me. I instantly found myself wanting to rebut her. There were definitely things about her that were weird. The color of her hair, for example. Why was Sis acting like it was completely normal? Yachi took off the rubber band around the container she was carrying and opened its lid. Inside, there were 3 croquettes. She grabbed one of them and presented it to me. The croquettes and Yachi didn't at all fit together. It looked like someone had taken 2 pictures and hastily edited them into one.
This is a seal of our acquaintanceship. Will you eat it?
Okay. Sure.
It seems impolite to refuse, and so I took the croquette. I then tore it in half and gave the other part to Sis.
I'm pretty sure I've tested this before.
Sis mumbled, having immediately grabbed the thing from my fingers and tossed it into her mouth. I decided to try it as well, and just like Sis, I also recognized the taste. They were croquettes from the meat store, the same ones Mom often bought when she couldn't be bothered to cook. They were mostly potatoes and had just a tiny meat inside. I loved them.
Destiny!
Yachi repeated herself from earlier. It had almost sounded like she'd been about to say, delicious, which would have made sense considering that she'd begun eating as well. Still astonished, Sis smiled a little. You could really tell Yachi was enjoying the croquette from the way she munched it. Yachi grinned at me. I've learned her name. She smiled at me. What had once been a weird had now changed into a pretty. Her eyes and hair had settled in my heart, almost as if they've grown wings and flown there. She might have been the same height as me, but the color of them didn't belong to an elementary schooler. No, it belonged to a fairy. That's what I wanted to call her, for she was fluttering inside my head. It was easily the biggest surprise of the year for me, and colored me blue from head to toe. That day, I met my strange friend, Yachi.